But still, Jean, we have high expectations of apps and what we can do with them in future. And then, Jörn Wittman, I come to you, of course. We're depending on data and analytics, and there is the GDPR. What are the constraints and what is actually feasible and possible?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jean, for nudging me a little bit into the line of fire. Actually, I wanted to jump there voluntarily, but you did the job for me already. It's actually true. I'm pretty sure that the colleagues over there already wanted to implement a lot of the features you were asking for and had to respect legal obligations, especially with latest changes in the regulation when it comes to data protection. So from my perspective, there are three dimensions when I follow the discussion here, where we have to make sure that data protection laws are obeyed. And that is first, of course, obtaining the data within a digital solution. So that has to be made very clear that all rules of data protection are followed there, because this is the beginning of the chain. In the moment when you would obtain that data not on a legal basis, everything else which comes after, which would be treatment, a treatment scenario, or in a science scenario, would cause problems because you couldn't use that data for that. So that's the three dimensions I see here, and all three dimensions have very different obligations when it comes to data protection law. There are the classical ones. I can name a few here without going too much into detail, like transparency. Of course, you always have to say what data you actually really use so that the data subject can understand that. One important aspect, and now the problem you see already at the end of the chain, is data minimization. So you're only always in every step allowed to take as much data as you really need. If you use more, you get a problem, or you at least need a consent. But the consent in the scenario is not easy to obtain. There are new solutions within GDPR that you can do it, but it's not easy. Yeah, and also, of course, the principle of purpose. That means you can only use data for that specific purpose you obtained the data for. There are some exceptions, but in every part of that chain, you have to follow these rules. And I agree that that is something we still have to figure out for every single step. But I think it is possible, that the treatment is made possible. We have to look very clearly what could be the legal basis for that, but it is possible. Also in the big data scenario. I don't think that anonymization is the tool that would always work. I don't agree here. I think the common definition of anonymization is different than a lawyer's definition. So it would not be enough to just erase the name, but have the rest of the patient files still available. That would not be anonymized data in a legal way. So, and for many, many reasons, for treatment scenarios, but also I think for a lot of science scenarios, at least what was told to me, you need unanonymized data. And for that purpose, you will always need a legal basis, which is usually you need it for that specific purpose, but in many scenarios you will need the consent of the patient. And I think this is the now very tricky part, especially when it comes to the big data, to give more details here, because usually in the big data scenario you collect a lot of data that doesn't make sense together now, but if you put an algorithm on it, you find something you didn't see before. So for that reason, it's really hard to specify what the purpose of your science is, because you might find the purpose out after you did it. But the problem is, to obtain a consent, you need to tell the patient the purpose of the data processing. So for science in the GDPR, there's a solution actually called broad consent. It's where a patient could say, yes, in a certain scientific environment you can use that data, but how that exactly looks still is up to concretization by the European Data Protection Board or other tools. But what I really would like to point out is when I read the headline here that it's legal obligation is a barrier. I'm not really sure if I share that opinion. It's an obligation you have to fulfill. It's protecting the rights of the data subject. But the strong data protection law also gives a chance that patients are willing to share their data. And then on top of that, you have a higher level of data subject rights in the GDPR. So that means if you communicate well what you are doing, you do the right job at the beginning. When implementing data protection in your tools, right at the beginning, called privacy by design, and communicate it well to the patients and show them, okay, we treat your data well, and even if you get the feeling you're not satisfied with how we do it, you can still revoke your consent or have other tools to fulfill your rights on that subject. I think it's also a big chance to use that data in a science scenario. So I think the protection is here not a barrier, but a chance. Coming here from Germany, where data protection is a really big thing and a lot of hysteria around it, I can say for, I think, a lot of patients in Germany, it would be really important in the moment they understood that the data is treated well and it's used for a purpose the person understands. I think the data can be used based on consent in the scientific scenario.
Dr. Usmani, has this been an issue for you in developing your app, data privacy?
So it hasn't. When we did our survey of our patients, over 70% were happy for their data to be used in a digital environment. And recently, Asthma UK did a survey of over 3,000 patients, and I think it was over 90% were happy for their data to be used in a digital system that would benefit not only themselves, but the health of colleagues or other sufferers.
Jörn?
Well, it's a chance. I do agree, and we have a paper in common already on geolocation. So, and I want to extend this. So I think that this GDPR is a bit blocking at the beginning because we still do not know exactly what it is. But in 2 years' time, it will be a chance by comparison to countries which do not have the GDPR. Because those people like you, like Peter, like me, we want to make things legally. It's not easy. We need lawyers like you, but we will change also the way we are working with patients. And this will benefit to everyone. It will benefit to the patient, it will benefit to us. It's like when we were doing clinical trials 40 years ago, there was no ethical committee, nothing. Now it's very strict, and the clinical trials are far better than they were 40 years ago. I reviewed a paper by Tim Clark, who was a great man. He published a paper in the BMJ in 1976 with 5 patients. How could you do that today? So I think that the GDPR, like the ethical issues in clinical trials, will make medicine better and will help to do the medicine in the right way, but with the right patients and the right doctors. So to me, it's a chance. Thank you for saying.
And also, if I may add here shortly, I think also your patient-centered approach is also the solution from the legal perspective.
Yes.
Because as you just said, I'm not surprised of the result that 90% were happy with that, because I think you have to give the people context when they provide you with consent or when you explain them what you are doing with their data. So in the moment they understand, they will provide it to you. And that's the patient-centered approach, I think, is the right way here as well.
Dr. Hellings, do you see GDPR as an opportunity also?
Well, it's an opportunity and it's mandatory for everybody who is involved in digital tools in the healthcare sector. Not so much in the context of a physician advising the use of this tool, because then there is already a kind of quality label and there is a kind of medical legal context already allowing the patient to get confidence in the tool that is being provided. But when patients get access to these digital tools just through social media or via the pharmacist or whatever other context, then GDPR compliance is of paramount importance. I like the idea that you bring up again the patient-centered approach also in the development of the digital tools, and this is exactly what also my sinusitis coach has gone through. Patient days have been organized in Amsterdam, in London, in Leuven, in Barcelona, in Graz, or in many cities in Europe, where in every city 15 to 20 patients had been gathered and asked for their opinion, asked for their needs to be guided further in their treatment plan and to reach higher levels of control for these patients. So this has been the base of the development of my sinusitis coach, which is, according to my opinion, the reason why this coach is used at an average duration of more than 1 month, which is unique. If you compare the duration of use of mobile health tools across Europe, then some applications take a unique position on that, and maybe you could comment on that as well.
Yeah, I think that is true. I mean, I don't have any statistics in mind, but I think what is also important is this patient-centered approach does not, or is hard to fulfill in every scenario. For example, there are mHealth tools which are more like connected to lifestyle data. For example, when you collect information how much a person is walking and these things and how the heartbeat is, but it might come to a point that this data might become relevant in a different scenario and might be used for science as well. And here, creating the context is harder than in the direct treatment app that you have. But I think also this data has to be used and has to be legally obtained to be used in the scientific scenario. So that's, I think, also one important aspect.
We're talking a lot about this in Europe, but how about Facebook, Google, Apple? They don't need legal consent at this point in time due to GDPR because their servers are not in Europe.
That is not relevant. They have to follow the rules of the GDPR. There's a new concept. Okay, maybe they are not doing it, but they have to. So in the moment when they are processing data of people inside of Europe, not even citizens, only of people from here, they have to follow the rules of the GDPR. So for that reason, I don't think that this is. It's always a problem, of course, from the enforcement perspective. To get to the United States and to their data centers. But yes, they have to follow the rules as well. In the moment, data is processed from citizens or people inside of the European Union.
But in fact, they are not following the rules for a very simple reason. You have the possibility to follow the rules, and then every 2 days you have 10 minutes to fill what you want. So at the end of the day, if you want to use Google, you say I agree, and then you don't go to the 10 minutes file.
Yeah, but I don't think that this is. This is recorded now, and Google is a founding member of my primary association in Germany. So I have to be careful here. But I think Google is a good example, but I don't think the example you just brought up, which I think more is in the Facebook context, that this is in compliance with the GDPR anyway. So I think there will be court decisions in the near future stating that this is not legal and they have to change process.
May I emphasize that our opportunities from a legal perspective go beyond GDPR as well. So if we evolve more and more into patient-centric care, digital has to evolve as well. So we might come up with digital solutions where doctors give their treatment advice through the app to the patient to enable a personalized treatment plan. So there we touch other legal aspects that we might have to assess and to manage as well, because giving medical advice through digital solutions involves other legal liabilities. So it goes beyond GDPR, and I see it certainly as an opportunity, but there might be some other opportunities from a legal perspective as well that we might have to embrace over time, and we need to reassure it as well moving forward.
That's a really good aspect, because now we have with GDPR and harmonized law, at least within the European Union and for everyone processing data of Europeans. We don't have that in other legal areas. So I'm not specialized on medical liability law, for example, but I know it's not harmonized. It's completely different in Europe. It's completely different all over the world. So the moment when you move to the treatment scenario, actually for every country in the world, you would have to follow different rules coming to liability and other issues. And I think this is a problem. And as we did with GDPR, we have to move forward also in other legal areas to harmonization and to make sure that these apps can actually be used in any kind of scenario, in any kind of area of the world.
Gert, Mariën, if you're talking about doctors advising their patients through digital tools, how about the technological capabilities? Are we there yet?
We aren't there yet, but we are on a good track, I think. We have all very good concepts. So it's very important that we address two technological opportunities. First of all, we need a very strong front-end solution, meaning that the app or the tablets that we build, that they're very appealing, user-friendly, and very accessible in using it as well. But most of all, the back-end solution, and I become here very technical, but it's very important, where all the data is stored on iClouds and servers need to be protected, need to be well managed, and also treatment algorithms need to be captured in these back-end solutions. So they need to be very, very much robust and very responsive. So a strong front and back-end solution is critical for a good usage of the solution.
And Andrew, would that be an added value for you?
Yeah, we've talked earlier about the importance of trying to, as you said, kind of predict the future I've had my condition 20 years. I've been diagnosed for about 15 years. That's 15 years worth of data that could have been collected that could then try and inform what the future would be. So, yes, I would be quite happy to consent. It's interesting, Dr. Hellings said it comes down to context. If I go onto a website and that asks me just to click something and give my consent, what are they doing? What's it for? But as a patient, when you're in with a consultant, you have a specific diagnosis, then I'd be more, and a specific explanation of what's happening with the data that I'm consenting to, then, certainly I would be more than happy to do that. So, yes, that'd be very beneficial.
And having online consultation, online advice, do you believe in that? Would that be a help for you?
Not in my case, but with your history, it would be possible.
Yeah, I would certainly find that beneficial, as I mentioned at the start. When you've just seen a consultant, if you're 2 months down the line and suffer an exacerbation, I had that this year. I took a course of steroids at Christmas, thought everything was going to be great for 6 months. I had an exacerbation 6 weeks later. My nose was very, very bad. I've then got 5 months to wait until I can see a consultant, and as a patient, that's a long time to be in a difficult position. If I could have gone onto a website or a mobile app and connected with a consultant there and then, and most importantly, they wouldn't necessarily have to tell me what I could do, but they could then give me advice to take to my GP, and my GP could then manage it locally, and that would be really important, because I kind of, as a patient, I've had the condition a long time, so I can make a guess on what I think is the right course of action, but I'm not a healthcare professional. So yes, that kind of immediate consultation would be very beneficial.